Welcome to By Your Side, Divorce Law and Support.
Welcome back to By Your Side, Divorce Law and Support with Ms. Patricia Sokolich. Pat is a longtime family law attorney and now a dedicated divorce coach, helping women navigate the emotional and practical challenges of separation without the stress of hiring a lawyer. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about one of the most common questions women have when they're ready to move forward. Where do I even start? This is, I want to file a divorce, but where do I start? Welcome, Ms. Patricia.
Welcome. Thank you very much. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Pat, what are some signs that it's time to seriously consider divorce?
Well, for every couple person, it's different. Sometimes it takes people years. Sometimes there's an event that triggers it and it's right in your face and it's immediate. So as I said, for every couple, it's different. Some people talk about divorce, threaten divorce, and some people just go ahead, get a lawyer, and file for divorce. So there's different ways that people come into a divorce, and there's, of course, different approaches on how the individual handles it. Right now, I'd like to just focus on what are the signs of divorce. There are many things that happen in a marriage. One of the I found more interesting things in my practice recently was the age of couples that are divorcing. Couples that, women or men have come to me and they're in their 60s and maybe mid 70s and they're looking to get divorced.
Wow.
And, to me, that is shocking because you just assume if somebody's been together that long, 30, sometimes 35 years,
Wow.
People ask, why would they get divorced? Well, what I've come to understand is that it's pretty reasonable. The children are gone, which is many people don't get divorced because of the children. So the children are gone, the nest is empty, and the couple starts to really have to look at each other very closely, and sometimes they don't like what they see. Nowadays, women work so much more financially independent. So a woman like in her 60s, she can think about divorce because she may be working independent, financially independent, and just took a look around and says, I want to enjoy some of my years, and I'm not happy with where I am. So there is that senior divorce. I'll talk about that more in depth in another episode. But when it comes down to why, there's a million reasons why, and only that couple or that person knows when they have had enough and they have to leave. So it's a very individual decision people come to.
So Pat, once someone decides they want to move forward, what's the first step you would recommend?
First step that I would recommend is to not advertise it. Not advertise it to your spouse, not advertise it to your family, and to try and keep control over who or what friends you tell. This is something that is very difficult to do because when you think about getting divorced, right away you want an ally. And I don't blame you. You definitely need allies during this period. But it's very, very risky to start reaching out to individuals and asking them or telling them. Everyone's going to give you information. Everyone's going to tell you how to do it, who to use, why you shouldn't do this, why you should do that. And I'll tell you that every divorce is individual. Every divorce is individual. So what your friend did or what your mother did or what your sister did, it doesn't work the same for everybody. So the first step that I would suggest is you educate yourself. Educate yourself. There's millions of books on how to get divorced or divorcing and when divorcing. You need to educate yourself and get some information. Some people run out directly and want to get a lawyer. That's the most important thing. I got to get a good lawyer. Well, you need to first think about what is going to be a good lawyer for you. Because as I said, every divorce is different. Every couple is different. And going out and just running around looking for the most expensive, the most high-powered, the most well-known attorney, just because you can afford them, isn't necessarily going to be the right attorney for you. So that's one of the things I would ask women to stop, slow down, and think about what they need out of this divorce and what they need out of a divorce lawyer before they run out and do it.
Well, what kind of information should women start to gather before they file? Anything in particular they should know about?
Yeah, that's a very important point. If you're really considering divorce and you know it's happening, either he's going to do it or you're going to do it. One of the most important issues is to figure out financially what's going to happen and what's around, what's available, and what do you have access to. Uh, every couple has a different way of handling their finances. Some people have one account, some people have separate accounts. Some people, their salary goes in one, and then the part goes in for household bills. So the first thing you need to do is start gathering all of the financial statements, your bank statements, your annual, all of your income tax, say for the last 5 years, your husband's statements, his wage statements. You need to have paychecks. You need to see exactly what he's getting, what are the benefits or whatever are there. So you need to have to surreptitiously getting paychecks from him and then making copies. But you need to start amassing all of this financial information. It's definitely going to be necessary in the divorce. And I will tell you that the more information you can gather ahead of time, the better off you are. Because once someone files for divorce, magically, all of these financial papers and statements start disappearing from the marital home. And so when your lawyer says, "Oh, get me the bank statements," you'll look and you'll say, "Oh, they're gone." So start make copies. You don't have to be too obvious, but make copies, keep them someplace separate. Then the next most important thing is to think about, how do I want the finances to work out? In other words, nowadays, the law says certain things, and we could always talk about them at a different time. But there are certain things that are going to happen throughout this divorce, and it's going to be important because it comes down to what is happening to the money. That's the most important part of this preparation. If you have a handle and you have copies of all of the documents ahead of time, you can present this to your lawyer. It puts them in a much better position to negotiate because they have all the information. One of the things that costs the most money in divorces, what makes them become so expensive, is something we call discovery. Discovery is the necessary exchange of financial information prior to settling a divorce. And what happens is somebody takes all the information and squirrels it away, and then your lawyer is going after it, and it takes time and it takes money, and it's unnecessary. You need to do this ahead of time. The other major issue that I find so important for women to consider is, do you have credit separate from your husband? In other words, do you have your own credit cards? Do you have a job? Do you have your own bank accounts? Do you have a pension? If you have separate finances, something that you can say, I have a credit rating, I have credit. If I go out tomorrow and decide I want to go to Citibank and I want to get a new credit card, I can do that. I don't need my husband's signature and his income to bolster mine. And there are ways, if you don't have your own credit, if you have never had your own credit, there are ways ahead of time that you can start establishing it. And that's something that I can work with you, so that going into the divorce, you'll have a handle on being able to establish your own credit.
So Miss Pat, where do you come in, as a divorce coach, helping women feel more confident and less afraid, as they begin this process?
Okay, so as a divorce coach, this is what I offer. This is what I can offer. And this is what I hope women will understand is an important first step for them before they go out and look for that lawyer. There are hundreds of questions women have, and men, hundreds of questions. And there's also ways of doing things. There are ways of preparing for divorce that are going to be helpful, and they're going to put you on a stronger footing going forward to divorce. One of those major areas is finances, so that working with a coach, I can tell you which documents you need to gather. Gather them now while they're still probably available. What to do as far as establishing your own credit, making sure you do have your own credit, because once you find out that he's the only one in the family with credit, it doesn't leave you in a very good position at all to move forward with your life. So if you need to get an apartment and you have no credit history, you're not going to be able to do it. So these are things, whether you do it 6 months, 3 months, a year before you actually file the divorce or before you actually get a lawyer, there's a lot of preparation work that can be done. As far as thinking about your children and custody, sometimes it's very simple. You just know your you're going to have custody of the children. He's going to have visitation. You're going to work out holidays. Sometimes it's just that easy. Other times, your husband may fight you for custody. And you have to know what's the best way to prepare for a custodial battle. What happens when the judge decides you need something called forensics? Forensics is when the judge orders a psychiatrist or psychologist to interview the family, the children, any relevant outside people that would be pertinent to the marriage. It could be teachers, doctors, whomever. And then that person will assimilate all the information and hand a report to the judge saying these are the basics for this is what the mother's about, this is what the father's about, these are where the children are at. They don't recommend custody to one or the other, but they give the judge outside information that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. So how do you prepare a client for a custody evaluation? There's a lot of information. Clients go in babbling. They don't know what they're talking about. This is something I can help them with before we even get to that point. The other issue, if I could just take a minute, which
Yes.
I also think is very important. Some people are nowadays going into what we call mediation. And mediation is a process where there's one mediator. She can be an attorney. She doesn't have to be. But the couple will go to that person, bring the information to her, and then they'll sit down and they will be deciding who gets custody, who gets visitation, who gets the holidays, how much child support, is the wife going to get maintenance, all of the issues, settling the house, everything is done, but it's the parties that are agreeing to it between themselves. The mediator is only there to say, well, this is what the law says. Pretty much you can do what you want. So the mediator is only there not to advise, but to sort of help the parties come to decisions. Now, this is very popular, and it's something that many people do because it avoids the cost of hiring two attorneys, and people feel it's faster, it's cleaner, there'll be no fighting. Well, all of this is true, and mediation is a wonderful thing. But I will tell you this, unfortunately, it's not always appropriate for couples, because in some marriages, there's what I call an imbalance of power, meaning that the wife doesn't have, it's usually always the wife, but I've seen cases where it's the husband also. They don't have the ability to say no or not to agree with what the other partner is saying. So if the partner says, well, you can have custody, but I want the kids every weekend.
Right.
Well, that may work for some couples, for some it may not. But you have to have two parties that are able to give intelligent input. And if you have a party who's in a somewhat controlling situation in the marriage, that's going to come out in mediation. So for a person wants to mediate, they more than anyone would need a divorce coach ahead of time to straighten the situation out and let them know exactly what's going to happen, what they have to agree to and what they don't. So it's very important in cases of mediation to have someone ahead of time to help them negotiate. A lot of times after a mediation, I mean, I'm certified as a mediator. I haven't done a lot of them simply for this very problem. But usually what people do is they'll go to a mediator. The mediator will type up this agreement.
Right.
And then some media say, you have to take it to each individual attorney for review. Well, after it's all done, you send it to an attorney and your attorney says, oh, my God, this is terrible. What'd you do? But it's done. It's very hard to undo. If you go in with the knowledge ahead of time of what's to be expected and what you have to agree to and what you don't, you're in a much safer position and will come out with a much better mediation agreement.
Ms. Pat, what's one thing you would say to a woman or any client that's ready to file but doesn't really know where or how to begin?
Well, if you're at a point where you've made up your mind that you absolutely have to get out of this marriage and you have to get divorced, there are two things that you can do. You can, if you don't know an attorney and you don't want to just ask around, you can go to your local bar association. Every county has what we call a bar association, and you can call them up. They will have what we call a lawyer referral panel. And so you can tell them you live here, you want to get a divorce, and you don't know any lawyers. They'll give you a list of like 3 or 4 attorneys in the area, and then you can call them up and ask them if they charge for a consultation or not, and make appointments and go and ask questions. This will give you a feel for what the attorney's like and how they operate. So that's one way of doing it. The other way, of course, is word of mouth. Everybody seems to know the best attorney, and they will tell you who that is. Otherwise, I think that it's more important at this point in time for the person, before they run out and get a lawyer, to sit down and just think through the whole divorce process, how you want to come out in the end. One of the first questions I always ask a new client, is what do you want to happen at the end? Where do you want to end up after this divorce? Because that sort of lays out the whole groundwork of how we're going to operate, how we're going to go forward. So a lot of thinking and planning should be done before you even get into the lawyer's office. As a coach, I can do that for you. I can do that with you ahead of time. So you go in knowing what your plan is, not what the attorney's plan for you is, but you know what your plan is or what you want.
Ms. Pat, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. It's just been a lovely experience, and hopefully we can work together with clients and get them to the other side safely.
Absolutely. And if you're thinking about filing a divorce and you really don't know where to begin, you're not alone. Pat Sokolich provides remote coaching to help you feel informed, prepared, and emotionally supported every step of the way. To learn more or schedule a session, visit SokolichFamilyLaw.com and be sure to like, subscribe, leave a review if you found this information helpful. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.